This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
This is Things I've Found Online. And today we've searched the internet to bring you two of the world's finest comedy club owners. Joining us are the legendary Bob Fisher from the Ice House in Pasadena. And from JR's Comedy Club in Valencia, we've got comedian and comedy club owner Randy Lubas. I am still Jamie Alcroft, here with Danny Mann and tossing to a woman who needs some introduction, Louise Palenka.
Thank you, thank you, Jamie. Yes, we are here with comedy club owners. Members of this unique profession are rarely together in the same room. They are busy running their own clubs, so today's show may be more support group than podcast. Let the healing begin. But first, Jamie and Danny, have you recently found anything fun or interesting or online?
Have we?
Well, yes and no. It's a trick question.
I'll take the yes.
This story was all over the internet, all over the media, everywhere. I saw it happen live on television, but a good chunk of North America knows about it. So, and it's a male Cinderella story. So I'm from Canada, and I'm a lifelong hockey fan. It's a hockey story. And when we were kids, you're going to love this, Jamie, because this man not only, he's just breathing. So when we were kids, every team had one goalie. And if the goalie got hurt, the game stopped, and they waited for a half an hour to fix the guy up before the game could go on. Mm-hmm. Eventually, they started having two goalies. So if one guy got hurt, the other. So what happened a couple of years ago is there were some accidents, some things happened, and they came up with this thing called the E-bug.
Some accidents, some things happened? Could you be a little more vague?
People got hurt.
Okay.
People got hurt and there were injuries. So they decided to have a situation. It's called an E-bug, Emergency Backup Goalies. Mm-hmm. And it's a league thing, and every arena has one. So I was watching the game from Toronto the other night. Toronto Maple Leafs were playing Carolina. And there's this guy, a guy named David Ayres, who is a Zamboni driver, that's the big ice cleaner thing, and is also the Leafs practice goalie. Mm-hmm. So he works out with them and stuff, and they all know him. And interestingly enough, Jamie, he's a kidney transplant receiver. So I found a little connection to your world a bit.
Yeah.
And he also goes to all the Leaf games, Leafs home games, and is the emergency backup goalie. So if either team has a problem, but both teams have two goalies. So the odds of him ever getting in a game are minimal.
Very slim.
So in the first period, Carolina's goalie gets hit by his own guy, goes down, out of the game. As soon as he goes out of the game, this guy is paged. What do you kids say? Texted?
He's not even suited up.
No.
Right?
He then walks around the arena, goes down, and gets his stuff on, gets a Carolina jersey on, gets ready, and is now on standby.
Is there a backup Zamboni driver?
No, he's not the Zamboni driver at the arena.
Hope.
Okay.
He's the Zamboni driver at at their practice arena.
Now it gets complicated.
No, it doesn't. Not till Louis showed up. So he gets hurt. So now this guy's dressed and sitting on the bench. Now, as a kid, every guy I know growing up in Canada dreamt about doing this happening.
Driving a Zamboni. Yeah.
No, about getting called. Being called into a game. As a kid, a 7-year-old, we need you.
Sure.
You're going to go down and play in the game.
Put me in, coach.
So this guy's now waiting on the bench. Second period, the Carolina's backup goalie gets nailed, goes down, and is taken off the ice. This guy, the Zamboni...
it's a goalie bloodbath.
It's a dangerous game.
It happens once, maybe every 5 or 6 years.
You'd think people were shooting pucks at them or something.
Yeah.
Neither was a puck injury. It had nothing to do with the pucks.
Okay.
No, he got run over by a Zamboni.
Okay.
Right.
Apparently, the guy was waiting and just ran him over so that he could go into the game.
Yeah.
So he could go into the game.
So he's now in the game, and he's all excited, except he's playing against the team he practices with every day. Mm-hmm. So the first two shots, right through him. Mm-hmm. Lets in 2 goals right away, and everybody's feeling bad for the guy. And the team comes back, and they have a pep talk with him. And in between periods, he says, "I've got this, guys." Goes out in the third period, stones the Leafs, shuts them out, wins the game, and the crowd, 20,000 people in Toronto, even though their team got beaten, standing ovation for the guy. He's the hero. It's all over the internet. It's amazing. He's now been interviewed by every news media outlet in the country, got flown to the States. He was on the Today Show. He was on Colbert. And on Colbert, I didn't see it, but apparently Colbert in the middle of introducing the guests, "Oh, I pulled my hamstring. Could you take over?"
And the joke ensue.
Hand it over to him.
Perfect.
And anyway, it was just an amazing story. But when I went online, I was stunned to see that just like everybody knows it. It's all over YouTube. And
Well,
it's a great.
I saw how he blocked those last 2 shots. He pulled the Zamboni in front of the goal.
It's a Cinderella story.
I've got a video of that if you guys want to see it.
Oh, yay.
Some celebration.
Michael is
You got it?
on
Yeah,
it.
no, it's
Michael's on
the
it.
guy is just a hero. It's huge.
All right. There he is, coming in. Oh, that's after he won the game.
Yeah.
No, that's
Wow.
after he drove the Zamboni.
Did he have to clean up that night? That's so cute. Well,
And
thank you
that's
for that
wonderful.
story.
And thank you for your restraint and not making. You still
Thank
made
you.
some good jokes, but you didn't lambaste me. With
No.
Yeah,
it.
no, we just put seasoning. We just pepper
No,
it
it was beautifully
lightly.
done. I'd serve it right now.
You know, we come over and we say, would you like some? So let's introduce our guests. We have Bob Fisher.
Yay!
Good to be
Hey.
here.
Hey,
Bob Fisher, we looked for Bob Fisher online and we found his website
Yeah.
or his bio website to be mysteriously silent. And then, Michael,
Boy, I've seen that microphone before.
Michael, what happened next?
Wait a minute.
Oh, we discovered there actually is text. If you highlight
No,
it, you
wait,
can
I
see it a
can't
little
So,
bit better.
so Michael has the decoder ring.
Oh, you decoded it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh.
Bob,
However, it can also be read through a piece of matzah.
it's a show about the internet, and so you're going to leave here with tips and hints. You want a different colored font on that background.
Yeah. On a
You
dark
want it to
blue
pop.
background.
Oh,
Want it to
Oh.
pop.
Yeah,
What color
show
is
him
it? I
one
don't
more
remember.
time.
So show
him.
it to him without highlighting
Without
it.
highlighting
Okay.
it.
Yeah, it's
See?
invisible.
Witness
Yeah.
protection program.
There
So-
it
Where
is.
is it?
Yeah.
There
So
it is.
so more about Bob.
Okay.
So, Bob-
hey, would you design my webpage for me?
Wow.
More people know the backup goalie.
Maybe that's the problem with
So
the club
Bob,
the last few years.
I think heads need to roll.
Okay. All right. Good.
You got to be like Trump up in here. You got everyone who's not a loyalist has to go.
It was
Black
a
on
perfect
black.
bio. Perfect bio.
Perfect.
Fair enough.
So now on the Ice House page itself, you can read all about the Ice House. And the Ice House is Bob's club, and it's legendary. It's been there forever. And according to Wikipedia, from 1960 to 1978, the Ice House was a folk music club with acts coming from around the country to perform. During that same time, many comedians also appeared at the club. In 1978, the original owners were bought out by a trio of investors led by Bob Fisher.
Wow, I didn't
Who-
even know that.
Yes.
Of course, I thought Zamboni is a dessert. So,
Bob Fisher, Jan Smith, and
Mark Weingarten and
Weingarten.
my ex-wife Jane.
Okay,
And
so
Shane.
talk about what happened and how it went from being mostly folk to becoming mostly comedy.
Okay. Folk music was dying a miserable death at that time for the old owner. He couldn't find performers and people weren't looking to go to a folk club. And I had spent 2 years managing a comedy club in Newport Beach called the Laugh Stop for someone else.
Okay.
That was a great club.
And so my buddy Jan said, hey, the Ice House is for sale in Pasadena. You want to go take a look at it? And I said, no way. I never want to work this hard again. I worked my butt off, as Randy knows what running a club is like,
Starting the Laugh Stop.
for 2 years.
Did you start up the Laugh Stop?
Yeah, I opened the Laugh
No
Stop.
kidding.
Was
Yeah.
Bob Stain or Skane or the guy who now has the coffee gallery? Was he involved with you?
No, but he was the original owner. He's the one that I bought the club
That's
from.
what I thought. Okay.
He took it and ran it the first 18 years.
Got it.
Into the ground.
So anyhow, since I'd been in all comedy, when we came to, we did decide to buy the Ice House, and I turned it, along with my partners, into an all comedy club. And so it's been that way ever since.
Into a comedy icon. I mean,
Been there
everybody knows
long.
the Ice House. When Mac and I were in New York and we were coming out to California, people go, "Hey, you'll get to work the Ice House. Great club. I mean, it was legendary. It truly was.
Yeah,
It
we've
still
had
is.
we've
It
had
still is.
Yeah. Among performers who have recorded more than 75 live albums at the club are
Oh, my
the Smothers Brothers, Gallagher, Lily Tomlin, Pat Paulson, Richard Jeni, and George Lopez. Other comedians who have performed at the club include Bob Newhart, George Carlin, Robin Williams, David Letterman, Jim Carrey, Jay Leno. The list goes on. And
Wow,
on
that's
and on.
fantastic.
God.
Yeah,
Well,
you
I
should
never
have
heard
been
of
there.
any of those.
if all of those people recorded 75 live albums,
Yeah.
that's over 30,000 live albums recorded there.
Wow.
I just did the
No, I
math.
think it's a total, Jamie,
Oh.
not
Oh.
Oh, a
individually.
total of
a total
75.
of 75.
Is it the
Gotcha.
acoustics because the club was made for music, so it records really well?
You know, that is part of it. Actually, we've had people come in and take the measurements of the club, including the height of the stage, and that's what we hear all the time. The sound is so good. Comics, as you know, love having a good system so they can hear the laughs.
Right. It bounces
Right?
off the ice.
It bounced off the ice.
It's
yes.
it's an interesting, right,
Very intimate.
an interesting dynamic because the stage is lower than the audience.
What?
Yeah,
Oh.
the stage is right down there, and the audience is ramped up around it. I mean, only slightly, but it's still ramped up. And I think that's what gave comedians a sense of just a living room kind of thing.
Yeah, it is
Performing in
tiered.
front of the
It is tiered
fireplace,
just a
you
little
know,
bit.
when you got family out there.
Why
It's
is it
very
called
intimate.
where did the Ice House come from? Where did the name come from?
It actually was a place where they made ice. As a matter of fact, 3
And how
months
do you
ago,
do that?
someone came by. I don't know. They made ice.
How
They
do
said
you do
we
that?
would
Somebody
open the
lost the
front
recipe,
door when
apparently.
someone came and said we'd open the door when I was a little kid. We would take ice and we would leave money. And so that was a long time ago. That's before 60.
So when I get ice from my refrigerator, I should leave like a quarter or something.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So
So
if they
yes.
made ice before the invention of air conditioning, I
Mhm.
think that would have involved magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, they made ice.
They did- they
there
farmed
there
it.
was refrigeration. They
There-
just hadn't realized yet you could refrigerate people.
Ice
The
was
whole- the whole
ice,
room?
ice was farmed.
room.
It was cut up on lakes and stuff and
That's
Yeah,
stored.
I think you
and
had to
sh-
get it from somewhere cold.
Mhm.
I'm not a scientist.
I am.
But
Lake
Yeah.
Simcoe had ice farming.
and now
Right.
when did it stop being an ice house? Do you know
So
that?
my partners and I bought it in 1978.
I
So I
remember
was there 41 years. I have to make an announcement now because maybe some people don't know about it. I actually retired as of November of last year.
that. Okay.
Really? Well,
And-
that kills this
and
show.
I know. So well, now you have a better chance of getting a booking there. So
Are you still on the board of directors?
I'm a consultant.
Ah.
So I'm there a little bit, but the new owner is Johnny Buss. He also owns a basketball team in LA called the Lakers, I
that's
believe.
the Buss family.
The
for
Buss
God's sake.
family.
Butts.
And he's the one because he knew the Ice House has a 59-year legacy.
Mhm.
He wants it to go on, and that's what I
Good.
was most
Good.
interested
Find
in.
somebody that wants to keep it
I
going.
didn't want to
Yeah.
sell it and find out it was storage lockers.
So did you
next
carefully interview people who were interested in buying to sort of figure out where they were going to go with it?
I went through 2 people before Johnny,
Um,
and they didn't work out for various reasons. And when Johnny came onto the scene, I talked to him for hours and hours. And he's the guy, he'd been to the club, unbeknownst to me, 6 or 7 times before I met him. So he knew the club, he loved the club, and
That makes a big
yeah.
difference.
it was really important.
How
And
old
he
a guy
also-
is he? How old a guy is he?
He's in his 60s.
In his 60s.
Yeah, so it's it's kind of a kid's game, and
Yeah.
he's a little older, but he seems to be enjoying himself. And
That's
during the
terrific.
first interview, it was interesting. He talked about his father, Jerry Buss,
Mhm.
and he said he and my father, when my dad was alive, we talked about one day opening a comedy club together.
Oh, interesting.
And
Yeah,
and
that's
a
sweet.
tear came down his
Oh,
eye, and he
wow.
said, "So
Oh, wow.
I kind of see this as me,
Fulfilling.
fulfilling
Yeah.
my promise
He was
to my
obviously
dad."
Adding even more
emotion-
legacy to the story.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
and an emotional
So-
investment.
Yeah.
Randy's story is equally touching.
Mm-hmm.
Randy has performed comedy for over 30 years in 42 of the United States, 4 Canadian provinces, and all over the world on cruise ships. I guess that means across international date lines.
That's right.
He has appeared 23 times on national TV, including Comedy Central and Showtime. He has produced thousands of live shows and 70 episodes of West Coast comedy, now seen on Hulu and on StandUpBits.com. He owns JR's Comedy Club in Valencia, California, and from 2008 until 2019, he owned the Ventura Harbor Comedy Club. He also runs the Ventura Comedy Festival. Randy opened JR's Comedy Club in Valencia 23 years ago. Jamie, our own Jamie, helped him run the club and hosted the shows for a couple of years. Truth or rumor, Jamie?
Truth.
Okay.
Jeez. Phew, boy, that was a trick question.
Yeah, wait till you get to the essay section.
Yeah.
This very week, Randy is hosting the World Series of Comedy for 6 big shows. He will soon be opening a JR's location in Simi Valley. He
Yay.
produced the Ventura Comedy Festival for 9 years. Randy, how has being a performer impacted your toolkit as a club owner and vice versa?
Well, you know, the thing of it is when you've been on both sides of the phone. You know, you've been there trying
Yeah.
to get gigs from your whole career, and then you're on the other side. So I think you have a little more empathy for comedians as a result of that.
So have you ever turned yourself down and said, we're totally booked?
I've had to do
We
that.
can't
a few
fit you in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
He has bumped himself.
I've
watched
sacrificed
that.
stage time. I have. Yeah. Because stage time is the most precious commodity a comedian could have. And if ever there was this instance where we were running short of time or there were too many comics showed up, I many times I relinquished time. But, that's the main thing that you would see, because so many of the people that became comedy club bookers across the country, and I'm not referring to Bob because Bob actually wasn't the person you contacted at the Ice House in all the years I worked there. It was Elaine or someone else.
Right.
But across the country, there were people that just put up a shingle in the 80s and became club owners, and they had their moment of power. And I call it the yield to pedestrian theory, where you give the single moment of power is when you step off the curb in Los Angeles and that driver is at your mercy and you walk as slowly as humanly possible across there. And these club owners would do the same thing. Their moment of power was to torture comedians, and I never wanted to do that. That wasn't something I wanted to do.
Wow,
you did.
You really missed out, Randy.
Had a lot of fun, right?
Yeah, that was the best part.
This guy was a torturer.
But I think a test of character is how you use power. And if you want to walk across the street slowly because you can, that just makes you a dick.
Because you're stopping traffic.
Yeah.
With great power
Don't
comes
you have
great
somewhere you need to be?
responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you own a club and you're empathetic and you treat people with the kindness and the respect and the dignity that they deserve, then I think then you're ultimately more powerful that way.
Yeah. As a one-time road comic, there were some terrible club owners out there.
Oh, there still are.
And I can name them for you.
That was that's
some
what,
of them are dead now.
That's what drifted out of the ethos.
Name the
is that
dead ones. I think that's fine.
Howard in Houston.
Horrible.
Howard Houston, horrible.
At the Laugh Stop in Houston. You weren't connected with that Laugh Stop.
Yeah.
You were?
Not that Laugh Stop.
Howard Marcus, was that his name?
That was his name.
That was I wasn't connected with that.
Oh, you weren't? Okay. Because he ended up, just drinking and snorting his life away. And John Cochran.
Wasn't that a country
Columbus,
song?
Drinking and snorting my life away.
But the thing
I
is,
love your harmonies, Louise.
Thank you. One of the reasons why people go into club ownership or the nightclub life is because they want booze and ladies.
And laughs. They want to be comedians themselves.
Or they want to be comedians themselves. But I always felt, because I have produced shows, never owned a club, but I've produced shows in Santa Barbara. Mm-hmm. And I always found that if you think you can own a nightclub and be one of the people drinking and pursuing ladies,
You're wrong.
you have to do your job so other people can come there and drink and pursue ladies. You have to be the one person who's not doing that. So was that something you guys realized while you were at it, that you had to be the one grown up in the room?
Well, I have a bad hip.
So harder to run after ladies.
He's got a good story about a bad hip.
To your credit, it looks fine from here.
Thank you very much. So my background was with IBM in marketing. And so I think if you're going to get into the nightclub business, you better be good at marketing.
Right.
Because the job actually is to fill seats.
Yeah.
Putting a show together, especially in L.A., because there's 10,000 comics in L.A., that's the easy part. The hard part is filling the seats every night, every show. And at the Ice House, we were doing 50 shows a month. Jeez. And so that gets to be real tough.
Did you pack your audiences, or what do they call it?
Comp and freebies and stuff like that.
Paper in the house.
You almost have to.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
Did you ever subscribe to one of those services where they would bring audiences in for you?
No, we had our own people. We had telemarketers. We had other systems we used. But
I remember you telling me at one point you could calculate exactly how much money it cost you for each person that they had to spend before you even broke even.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
And that's why the business model I have with JRs in Valencia is everybody pays to get in. It's a small room, but everybody pays to get in. And that's been the easiest business model. The Ventura was like what Bob is talking about, and you had to paper the house. But that model won't work where I'm in an existing restaurant and I only get the door, so everybody pays.
And I have a funny off-the-wall question for you guys, especially you three.
We'll decide if it's funny.
Okay.
That's
this
what
is a
Randy
perfect
and I do.
opportunity to find that out.
Because they're the judges.
During the big comedy boom, there people used to joke about all the names of these crazy clubs all around the country. What are the 2 or 3 funniest club names you guys can remember from the boom?
Oh, boy. Well,
I don't think this was a real club, but I remember the name Yuck Barn. I thought Yuck Barn was pretty
Pretty
funny.
good. Pretty good.
Somebody actually tried one in Santa Barbara. I'm not kidding. I think it was called Pee in Your Pants Comedy Club.
Comedy Club.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Classy.
That's,
Do you
Randy,
remember
make sure
one,
you-
Jamie? Do you have one up your sleeve? at all?
Randy.
Make sure you
Yeah,
hug that
I
mic a
don't,
little bit more.
Yeah, I really don't.
Because some of the names that used
because-
to come up, then people used to try and punch them up and add them to a skit.
Well,
or something.
Yuck Yucks, the punchline, a funny bone, just kind of
Chuckle Hut?
things you would the Chuckle
Yeah,
Hut, things
Chuckle
you would
Shack.
expect.
Yeah.
The funny Waffle House. Remember people used to, the crazy thing was when club owners would try to start a club or something, they would go into an existing restaurant and unbeknownst to the diners, set up a little nook in the corner and a microphone and a PA
yes.
system, and you'd be thrown up there. The old Jerry Stanley gigs in New Jersey and
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like that. Oh my God, Randy, you went through that.
Sure.
Yeah, where these people are eating at a steak and shake or something, and all of a sudden these people, hi everybody, welcome to the show, and they got their families there. And so I did one with Carol Leifer and Rich Scheidner once in Howard Johnson's in New Jersey, and those people just turned their backs to us.
They do,
and
because if they
ignored
came
us.
there to talk, that's
Wow.
one of the things I found about comedy that's so challenging when you're putting on shows is unless everybody's on board with this is what we're doing right now, it's going to be disastrous.
Yeah.
In other words, the music has to be turned off, the light has to be trained on the comedian, people have to be sitting close together, the ceiling has to be low, everyone has to be sharing the same energy, and
they have
listening.
to pay to get in. So
And-
there's an
and if-
investment.
And if the club owner says to you, well, they ordered a big meal, so if they want to talk, they can talk, that ruins it for every other
Right.
table.
Oh, yeah, and-
so we all have to agree we're doing
What are the-
comedy.
what are the ground rules?
We've tried that in a few
Yeah.
places that didn't work because there was a bar there and there were regular customers,
Yeah.
and the owner would say, well, these are my regulars. Now,
Right.
these guys are in here every day of the week. And I get that, but, it isn't going to work for comedy because they think they have a sense of entitlement.
So
and
that
they can make noise and do
Yeah.
what they want.
I got a call once from a sports bar in Long Beach called Legends. They said, we want to do a comedy night. So I said, well, all right. They asked me to book the show. So I booked the show, and I headlined a comedian named Steve Bluestein.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
we love
very
him.
well. Yeah,
Who is a very funny comedian, but
Very,
also a
very
very
funny.
sensitive guy.
Yeah.
Smart.
Sweet.
So the
Sweet.
jock that emceed the show is
Oh, no.
introducing
Oh,
him
dear.
to the sports audience.
Oh, bad.
And he says, so all right, he says, look, our headliner's supposed to be pretty funny, so don't throw shit at him.
Oh, goodness.
That
I
was
wrote
not
that
quite the
for him.
best introduction for Steve Bluestein. Oh, you wrote that?
Steve wrote that for himself.
For himself.
Actually.
All right, so we are a show about the internet, so I want to know how marketing changed or how your branding changed when the internet became a thing. Did you start using email blasts and or incentive programs or social media?
Yeah, how did it start? What were the larval stages of
You
the
know,
internet?
I started thinking about that, Louise, because when I first became aware of the internet, it was interesting. It was from doing comedy because on the road, you'd do a comedy club and there would be a comedy condo. And a lot of the people listening to this and watching this podcast are too young to remember when there was a thing as dial-up internet.
Yes.
And one of the early comics were always ahead of the curve, and there would be one comedian who was so ahead, and he had his computer and he could go online. He would monopolize the phone the entire time you were there, and it caused all kind of fights and grief because one guy would be on the phone, you couldn't use the phone, and
Mitchell Walters.
If you had a family or needed to check in on somebody,
Name shame.
you couldn't do it. So that was my first introduction, and it took me a while. But in terms of our club, we immediately had websites and were able to do email blasts and marketing right off the bat. Now Bob was in it a little longer than me, so he probably saw the advent of the internet,
The transition.
change everything for his standpoint. I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you exactly what year. I think we popped up a website as soon as JR's opened 20 years ago. So there had to have been a point where you didn't have a
Yeah,
website.
I was kind of
had one.
precocious, actually. I started using the internet back in 1947.
Blue
With your
ink
fax
on a
machine.
blue background.
You were ahead of Al Gore.
I was very ahead.
He
We didn't
put
get
12
much of a
pigeons
response.
out of work.
We didn't get much of a response. Actually, I bought the Ice House in '78, and in the beginning, we were trying to get the word out with the not even a fax machine. What was the
mimeograph
machine.
We had a mimeograph machine. So that was
There's a comedy club. Pass it on.
Yeah. So let me tell you how it's changed. The internet has changed it.
Did you have an expenditure for the newspaper when you started out?
We did little advertising.
Budget?
That was it. Newspaper, mimeograph. That was
magazines.
Not too much magazines.
Mostly newspaper.
Yeah. Back then, you write up your ad, you send it to a newspaper. They print it. They send you back the copy. You alter it. You send it back to them. So you needed to be about 3 weeks in advance whenever you booked an act.
Yeah.
And you keep your fingers crossed. Now,
that they don't.
Let's say in our case, we're talking to Joe Rogan, and you call him and go, "Hey Joe, I know it's Tuesday night. We've got an opening tomorrow night. You cool with that? Let's do it." He said, "How soon can you have it up online?"
Boom.
And it's like an hour, and you got it up online. He texts out to his family that I'm there tomorrow night. The calls come in, and in 30 minutes, the show's sold out.
Wow.
I mean, what a difference between the way it used to be. It's unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because you'd call up Joe and he'd say, "Where are you going to advertise it?" He said, "Yeah, there'll be word out in about 3 weeks, but we need you tomorrow night."
The flyers will come later.
Yeah.
They'll much later.
No, the internet's been such a boom.
It's very impactful. I know Randy uses it a lot because I'm on his mailing list, and you've got an interesting thing. You ask a trivia question,
Right.
for free tickets, and I must say that I think one of them was what sport uses a net, and I answered beach blanket bingo.
Right.
Nice.
And because Annette Funicello was in that movie.
And her name has fun in it.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, I write stupidly easy trivia questions.
Yes. and I won though. Anything. So tell me, is it no matter what you answer, you're going to win 2 tickets?
You can only win 1 ticket.
Only 1 ticket.
So
you got to pay for your friend, your driver.
Right.
So you can get blitzed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in hermit communities, this is huge.
This is
Hermit crabs love it.
Yeah, single person dwellings. They love it.
So another question for the panel. I watched the series I'm Dying Up Here.
Oh, that was.
And I'm curious what you saw in there, how much felt real, how much didn't feel real. Because when you mentioned the working in a little diner, there was a great scenario about that in there, but about the wars between the owners, etc. How did it feel to you?
Well, I came to LA just after the huge Comedy Store improv
strike
battle where the that Steve Labatkin, I think his name was, jumped off the roof of the hotel next to the
landed in the parking lot of the comedy.
Yeah.
I got here.
And they
charged
him
in 1984.
They still have the outline of it.
Yeah.
On the you got to.
But there were rivalries. There were rivalries across country too. Where in my hometown, Pittsburgh, where it opened, the first club that opened was the Pittsburgh Comedy Club, and then the Funny Bone opened, and it was a bitter rivalry. The clubs were calling each other, giving phony reservations that the shows they think the show was sold out. So and I know that it was a pretty stiff rivalry between the Comedy Store and the Improv for a while.
Yeah, huge.
But there were a few people that miraculously could do both, but most people picked one or the other. And I don't remember there was ever any conflict with the Ice House. There was really nothing there.
We're kind of
to compete
isolated.
with.
We're kind of like off Broadway.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you stayed out of the fray like comedy and magic because you're both really nice guys, you and Mike Lacey.
Yeah.
And then the other 3, they did whatever they were going to be doing.
Yeah, whatever they were going to be doing.
Battling
Mitzi
it
used
out
to
for
say,
all.
"I don't want you playing the improv anymore." I go, "Okay, Mitzi," and then we go play the improv that night.
So
What is she now?
So I assume
you were
you-
at the improv. Yeah, we killed. Thanks for nothing.
And that's how you handled it?
That's how I handled it.
Was
And
it
I said,
easier
yeah.
because there were 2 of you?
And Jimmy Brogan was the same way though. Brogan.
No, yeah, he told
worked
me
both clubs.
he would work any.
He
He wouldn't be bought or owned.
No.
But
And
like you said, probably not everybody could have gotten away with that.
Robin worked both clubs.
Oh, fantastic.
See, I never felt
Oh,
you had
great.
the right to ask someone not to work another club. You're
Right.
dealing with people who are struggling just to pay their bills, and you're going to book them every once in a while. What right do you have to say you can't work other clubs in the area? So
the
I'm
series
pretty-
was painful to watch. I mean, there were moments in it, and I didn't live it, but I heard the horror stories. So
Yeah, I never watched the series. I'm sorry.
No, you never watched it. I tried to watch it.
The book
Some of it was
the book was really good.
authentic. Who wrote the book?
I don't remember. We
That's
look
not
up
Kelly
I'm Dying Up Here
Monteith's
book.
show, is it?
It's just an excellent book, and it's the true story of what happened. The TV series is kind of like
They're dying up. What? Sorry, what was
I'm
Well,
Dying Up Here.
If you want to read,
book.
you want to read a great book about stand-up comedy that really captures it. It's Rich Scheidner's "Sifting Through the Ashes."
Okay.
Oh.
It is a remarkable book about stand-up
Yeah,
comedy,
he's brilliant.
and it was one of the few that really rang true to me.
Huh.
Ever.
And he has a show now that he started.
Yeah, the
up.
history of stand-up.
Yeah,
Very interesting. I've
I
seen
would
it.
love to see that.
I saw it at Kulak's.
Yeah, this
He
is
did
the
a
book. It's
preview.
by
Yeah.
Bill. It's by Bill
Long last name.
Oh, I remember him.
He has a long last
Yeah.
name.
Needleceder.
No Duffer. No Decker.
Yeah, it's an excellent book about comedy, and it's the true story of what happened.
Noodlesecker.
No, he.
Wait a minute, his Noodlesecker. That's
No,
the
that's
name
not
of
how
his-
you pronounce
Oh,
it.
it
That's
isn't.
illegal.
All
Well,
right.
that's a job in Austria.
Yeah, that doesn't work. You know, one
So-
of my,
It's a profession.
What do you? How do you coordinate what you guys are doing with what comics are doing to promote themselves, who are going to be in a lineup or have been at your club? Like, how do you coordinate what you're doing with what they may have posted? And are comics allowed to record themselves and put it up online at your clubs?
Yes, they are. Bob mentioned Joe Rogan. There are a handful of people like Joe Rogan who can instantly sell out a show, but most comics can't do that. And the ones you encourage everyone to do something on social media if they're coming to your club, but I have not been able to measure the absolute results of Facebook. I've advertised on it. I've tried it. And, and I've had so many people tell me that they were experts on it. And the result, if I post something like Australia's Thunder from Down Under with a picture of the male dancers, I get 1,000 comments. Let's go, girl. Let's go, girl. But I could put up a clip of a fantastic comedian and get nothing. So it's interesting.
I think you should open a strip joint.
Well, I used them for quite a few times.
Yeah, I helped you produce one of those,
Yeah.
I think.
All right, this is the best tease you'll
remember
ever hear
collecting the
going into
money.
commercial break. When we come back from this commercial break, you're going to see me on stage at the Ice House. It's a thing that happened.
Wheezy, wheezy, wheezy. Take it off.
Take a deep breath in. Now count to 10. There. Don't you feel better already? No. Why not? Oh, that's because that's anger management crap. Join me and learn real ways to overcome your anger. I share my own struggles and journey to break free of destructive anger. I will give you ideas and insight that will bring you to a place of healthy anger. Yes, there is such a thing. Learn how on that anger management crap with Matthew Plotner.
Boy, that
Wow.
pisses me off.
That pisses. I knew the
Easy,
jokes were coming.
Oh, my
That's
God.
a lot of pressure. If you have an anger management podcast, you have to remain calm. It's like if your company sells doors and you get there and the door is crappy, like.
Yeah. What can you do?
The
You've got to
producer-
have a great door at a door store.
the producer of the anger management podcast. Oh, the guests haven't shown up? No problem.
Chill.
Listen, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll just do a 4-hour monologue.
All right, so here, I think the year is 2006, and this is me on stage at the Ice House. We only have to watch, and you're going to see Fraser Smith.
Fraser.
Who's my
very
dear
funny
friend.
Oh, what a
man.
great
Very
guy.
funny man.
And he's introducing me, and then you can show me
Got
for
a
a
great
few
comic
moments.
coming up. She's an old friend. She's really, really funny, and she's got a podcast. It's called
I already had a
Wheezy and the
podcast in
Swish.
2006.
And,
1948
it's
she had a podcast.
And she is really, really funny. Give her a big hand. Louise Palenka, everybody. Come on. Louise.
This is the Ice House. That's me. I'm on stage at the Ice House.
Let me know! Yeah!
Okay, after one
awesome.
joke, that'll be enough.
It's a good
You
joke.
guys proud of Paris Hilton? I am. She got arrested for drunk driving a couple weeks ago. That was awesome. It was a little disappointing, though, because we didn't even get to find out how she feels about Jews.
Oh, that was a
What's
Mel
the point?
Gibson.
Yeah.
reference.
Get her drunker!
Get her
Joke.
drunker.
Interesting.
Mel Gibson.
Okay, that's enough. I
Back
don't
to
like
me.
looking at myself.
Good.
All right.
Great Mel Gibson joke.
I got
So
it.
I don't remember why I was there or if I was auditioning to be a regular. But
don't
when I got
remember
off
why
the
I was
stage,
there.
someone handed me a DVD, and this was in 2006. And you guys were way ahead of that curve with knowing that every comedian will leave here and promote my club.
Right.
So tell
With the
us
video.
what led to your realization of that.
We actually I think the Ice House always had great respect for entertainers. And so we weren't hoping that it would promote our club as much as we knew at that time that people wanted a good set that they could send to clubs across the country and would help them get a gig. And the Ice House audiences are very, non-industry. They're usually a good audience, and they had good sets. So our reason was to help the comics.
Nice.
You were
And you always have
wonderful club owner, Bob. You really were.
altruistic
But
motives.
do they have, do
Great
any of
job.
them right?
Every
I bet
None
they
of them
are.
right.
every comic, just both of these gentlemen really
Now, after your
likes
first
them.
performance, you and Mac were
Likes
handed a 78 of your set. Is that correct?
That's right.
It was a cylindrical.
Oh, the
actually.
wax.
Yeah, the
So-
wax cylinder.
So we're
But-
both respected, Randy and I, but would be honest, would you say I'm respected, say, just a little bit more?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's better to be
because,
loved
only
than
because you're
feared.
sitting next to me.
Yeah.
I think if you're loved, you inspire, and if you're feared, people hate you, and it's
It's not a point of being feared. It's they would disrespect the comics.
Louise, that was
They
so
tried
close to a poster.
They tried to pay you in cocaine. They would try to get you to do a free Sunday show. They would, the demand. They get you up at 7 o'clock in the morning to do a radio interview instead of what I would always do is tape the comics the night before as if they were there and send it to the DJ and let him fill in his own voice.
There's another thing that they do with the power, and that is that they will build you up and then tear you down, and because they like having that power over people. For example, I was made a regular at the Comedy Store, and because I was open micing and I drew number 20, and Mitzi was there to see the showcasers, and she happened to see me, so she makes me a regular.
In the belly room, in the original room?
No, the whole club.
In the original room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But then what happens is, like, Mitzi was never there, and then all of the male comics make you feel like a piece of
and they report to Mitzi
carp.
that you didn't
And
do
then
that well. Maybe.
She puts you on the lineup, and they don't call you to tell you that you have a gig, so now you're a
Right.
no-show.
Right.
And then you'll do your set, and then Tommy in the booth will say, Mitzi's watched your set and she was not impressed. So it really felt like I was being yanked around, and it was abusive. And so one day I just remember walking down the steps and thinking, I'm never going back there. It's making me worse.
Wow.
I don't have the personality that responds well to that, and I don't do well when I'm being threatened or when my soul is being crushed or when I'm being sexually harassed.
We should make a note of these things.
I
Jamie.
wonder if the club is run differently now that
Well,
Mitzi's
I think
not
it.
there.
I think it is, but one of the responsibilities is of a club where people have their aspirations held in the balance, like every night. It means so much to people, and you guys know this, and so you have to nurture the kind of atmosphere that feeds people's souls rather than robbing from them.
Well,
Exactly.
I think the word is dignity. I think both of these club owners would give the performers the dignity they deserved. And that's all you have to do. That's just being nice to somebody and being fair. That's all you have
I
to
can
do.
tell you, I all comedians are vulnerable. All comedians are sensitive. All comedians are insecure to
What
a
do you
level.
mean? What do you
and
mean?
Not you,
by
Jimmy.
the very nature of what we do, we subject ourselves to rejection on a nightly basis. Not on a nightly basis, but a joke by joke basis. It's the nature of what we do, and I understand that. I understand that it's painstaking and it's hard, and I think it's not that difficult to give somebody a kind and gentle rejection, as opposed to either just ghost them or not communicate with them or be rude to them. And that's what I've tried to do that.
Well, you have an advantage over a lot of club owners in that you are a very funny, intelligent comedian. I've always thought that.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah. That's not something we were ever looking for.
No.
But
No. You never worked the Ice House.
this is a little.
Well,
little.
I actually wore my Ice House shirt in honor of
50th anniversary.
That's right.
Let's get a close up of
9
that,
years
Jerry.
ago.
I was on that show.
9 years ago.
And
I was there too. I was on that show.
yeah.
Mac and I were on that show. That was one of our last gigs.
I always
At
loved
the
you
50th
guys.
anniversary.
And I can tell you that
50th anniversary.
Bob, directly or indirectly, got me thousands of dollars worth of work over the years from all the satellite clubs that he was involved with, and so I greatly appreciated that for all these years.
Good.
Yeah.
You know, a number of years ago at the Ice House, a long time ago, probably 1979, I went in to see the headliner that week, and I saw him twice. And, I at the end of his set, I went, I've watched you twice this week. It's just not working. And it wasn't for me.
that.
And it wasn't for me because I listened to the audience.
Was it more Mac or more Jamie?
Oh, well, it wasn't. This wasn't Mac or Jamie.
Oh.
But this was a guy.
I
and
saw his face sinking.
Were you upset?
No, I wasn't.
Okay,
No,
all
no,
right.
no. Go ahead.
So this wasn't the guys.
It was a joke.
This was 79. And I said, I'm not going to book you back. He said, I appreciate your honesty. And I wrote down in my book, unexciting headliner, don't book back. And so that was Jerry Seinfeld. So that's 1979. Whatever. I haven't even heard his name since then.
What happened?
And
to
what
him?
happened to that guy?
Yeah.
He's working the road. He's in a comedy condo somewhere.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was wondering is if who you saw early that had promise that if you want to tell us some interesting backstage stories.
Sinbad. I remember seeing Sinbad. He would maybe one of his first times on stage, and he just had this unbelievable charisma that you just knew that because he could just talk about whatever happened that day, and he didn't even know what he was doing,
He's
and
still
he was
like that.
he was really, really good.
Yeah.
He's very funny, man.
More recently, I've produced the Ventura Comedy Festival, and I have a comedy competition. So I would look at every submission that wanted to enter the competition, and I got a submission from Taylor Tomlinson about 4 or 5 years ago when she was 18 or 19. It was so mind-blowing good. I called her immediately, asked her if I could manage her. That's how good it was.
Wow.
And she's gone on and had quite a start to her career. It was an astounding for the age she was, how good her video was.
Are you still managing her?
No, I didn't. Never did. She turned me down.
Oh, do you manage Olivia still?
I manage Olivia Harewood,
She's a
wonderful writer,
comic.
comedian, and she's now writing on the Late Late Show with James Corden.
Olivia Harewood.
Olivia
Go see
Harewood,
her.
just sensational. She's great.
How do you guys handle, or what is your policy towards? Because at the Comedy Store, it was you can't write in the showroom because that meant you might be stealing someone's joke, but. Nowadays, everyone's walking around with a TV studio in their pocket. So, how do you manage
What's that bulge?
What are the rules in terms of making certain that jokes are safe and that people aren't even coming in? I know there's like lots of legendary stories of people, even just people that weren't comedians, but that were writers going in and stealing jokes and then using them.
Oh, we saw her stuff on sitcoms all the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen
On
my
Friends.
jokes on sitcoms, and I know, and because I was hosting at the Laugh Factory, I know the joke was so identical that I know it was lifted. So, do you guys have any policies that help protect people's material?
It is very, very hard to do. I too have had some of my legendary trademark bits stolen from some of the most famous comics in the world.
Roe versus Wade.
And
one of them, I betcha.
And
that was a good one.
And
that's a good joke.
That's a good one.
It's a good joke.
It's been taken from
Tell
me.
the joke so that everyone can play
What's the
at home.
joke? Yeah.
I say these people in Bakersfield, these are people who they let them vote. These are people who think Roe versus Wade means how you cross the river.
That's good.
Oh shit! That was yours.
That's a good.
I'm so
great
sorry.
joke. Great joke.
We're
You stole it.
Yeah.
the Ice House is taking phones. What are the little packs that they put them in now? And
Really?
Yeah, put them in packs. People carry their phone and they can't use them in the showroom.
So you don't want anyone recording the show.
Well, if you want celebrities there and for them to show up, they don't want anyone recording the show. I personally don't care. We're doing it again for the talent in an effort to get more talent, better talent to come to the club. They don't want to see their show on YouTube.
So do you make an announcement as well, just so it's crystal clear, like a Broadway show? There will be no use of recording equipment.
Well, the phones are put in the sack before they go into the showroom.
What kind of sack?
I forget what
are you
it's
talking
called.
about?
Oh,
Is that
you
like
got
leave
Jamie
your
excited.
guns
So
at
you
the
guys
door?
mean you don't know that?
There's a sack that protects it from ringing or stops it
No,
from.
it goes in the sack and it magnetically closes, and they can't open it until when they leave. It it opens.
You're
and
making
they
this
can
shit
have
up.
it
So
back.
instead of
You're not
stealing
aware of that?
material, now people are stealing phones.
Well, they're carrying their own phone.
They keep their own phone, but it goes into
Are you
a
doing that for
private
non-celebrity
sack.
shows?
We do it on the weekends now.
You do it
and
on the
probably,
weekend?
Every weekend?
Yeah, whether it's a celebrity or not.
Wow.
So what's that? What happens?
We do it on the weekends
Check your
now,
phones
whether
at the
it's a
door.
celebrity or not.
Oh, whether it's just this way. There's no recordings that go.
Yeah, it started out with Chris Rock would bring brought his own people, and Kevin Hart, a lot of other guys started bringing this company in that would have these sacks, and then we went, well, let's buy them and have them here, and then that way they don't have to worry about that.
Very
Well,
smart.
in the early days of cell phones, I watched Jay Leno walk off the stage and grab somebody's phone. Because it was one of those things where it was kind of like just spotty. There'd be one or two people that had some sort of recording device, and comics felt like they could control that. And then now it's increasingly become everyone has one. So what do you do? Just assume that they would record if they had even the slightest bit of opportunity. So you have to just say this is. So then maybe they relax a little. They put their phone in the thing, and it's just like, oh, I don't have to worry about, oh, this is the good part, because people get distracted when they think they have a work to do. Like, oh, this is where I should start recording. I know this joke. And that way they can relax and just enjoy the moment.
Yeah, out in Pasadena, where we don't get the industry crowd, as I mentioned before, and so we don't have a lot of that going on, people writing jokes and things. But we do have a security guy in the showroom, and so he watches. And if someone during the week, when we don't do the little goody thing, they're holding up or they're trying to take pictures, we go up to them and tell them, you can't do that.
Yeah,
So-
we do the same thing there, but we don't have the bags.
Now you will. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I mean, but we actually had bits stolen, and it wasn't just a joke. It wasn't just a line.
That's amazing.
The
Like
whole
those
bit?
It was a
routines?
concept.
Right.
It was a dynamic.
Oh, I had full bits stolen too.
Full bits. Yeah.
So the thing of it is when mine was stolen, you talk to copyright lawyers, and they want a $20,000 retainer just to even look at it. It's just you can't fight it.
No,
There's
you
nothing
can't control
you can
it.
do.
All you have to do is write a better joke.
That's right.
That was always the
Oddly,
rule.
though, there was a comedian, you guys will probably remember Carol Siskin, who copyrighted every joke in her act.
Oh, really?
And when they stole her bit on a TV commercial, she was able to recover.
God bless her.
Yeah, it was the joke about 2 minutes left in a game, and that's guy time versus girl time. I don't remember the exact joke.
Shopping time versus football time.
Yes.
Yes, I
and
remember that joke.
it was an ice cream ad. Took it almost verbatim from her, and she recovered from it. Yeah,
Good. She's a wonderful artist too. I've seen her drawings.
Oh,
she really is. She's a very dynamic artist.
And a wonderful dancer.
And the last time I saw her was in Cleveland, Ohio, at a White Tower. Right.
All right.
Right. She was eating sliders.
Dina has a question for you.
Love that girl.
Are you ready, Dina?
Oh,
It's
I thought
your
it sounded like a call in.
Yeah, I
said
know.
Dina has a question, and Dina was like, "No, I'm on my phone."
Dina in Guam, go ahead.
Yeah, Wonder the man in the yellow jacket is single.
Is everybody?
Yeah.
Are you done?
Yeah.
We're ready.
We're never done.
Okay. In terms of comedy itself, being in a unique position to watch its evolution and the direct reaction of audiences so closely and for such a length of time, I wonder if you guys have thoughts about the internet's influence on how comics come up with material, how audience tastes have changed, stand-up's role in the larger entertainment industry. If you have thoughts about
Is that a two-part question?
That's a 4-part
I'll
question.
tell you what. One thing I've noticed is that because of Facebook and people just being self-centered because of Facebook, I think a lot of comedians now are talking about themselves, where when I started, it was observational comedy in the school of Seinfeld, where you would see something that looked wrong in the world, you spotted it, you pointed it out to the audience, and the light bulb in their head went off, and they related and laughed.
Every man.
And now a lot of very, very popular comics talk about themselves. They're storytellers about their life. And I think it's sort of a reflection of this wanting to point out everything that you do online, and maybe carries over into their stand-up. And I find that some of those people get huge, very loyal followings and their people will laugh at stuff that a lot of people don't even get. But it still is their path to success, and everybody's got a different one.
Because they're
but
fans.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, because they're Facebook fans, and then they become audience fans.
It's sort of like
is Pete Holmes one of those guys you're talking about?
I'm not that familiar with Pete's stand-up, to tell you the truth on that. The one that comes to my mind is Tom Segura, is a guy who just through social media became hugely popular before I had even heard of him.
It's like they're creating a sitcom character that is themselves. So you're laughing ahead of them because you know how they would respond to a certain thing.
Yeah, satisfaction.
Right.
It's where you go in expecting Tommy Smothers to be the dumb one, and when he is, you're happy.
But you actually know that Tommy's smart, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the secret to their success.
Are there many teams left? Comedy teams, duos?
Boy, the Sklar brothers. Have you seen them or heard of them?
Hardly any. The money is so light for the first, 10 years that when you start splitting it up, you just can't afford
you gotta love it or
to
want
be a
it.
comedy team. I love comedy teams.
That's why we were overpriced. Sometimes we didn't get booked because it was too airfares.
Right.
Just a moment of reverence for Jack Burns, who just passed away recently. I
Burns and Schreiber.
Loved Burns and Schreiber so much.
Harlan and Burns.
Used to love mimicking them. I got a chance at one point to work with each of them and mimic both of them to that.
Oh, we need to hear a minute.
Oh, yeah,
of
we got to
that.
hear it now. Let's hear it.
Oh, don't tell me, my friend. We were out in that club for hours there. You were alone in the club, were you? Yeah, sure. We were that good-looking blonde. She was all over me.
Huh?
She was blonde, huh?
Yeah,
sure. And they both loved it.
Huh?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, Davy Cronin, the Cronin brothers were there.
I did a cruise ship in Tahiti, and Jack was on the ship, and we hung out probably about 15 years ago, and we had a good time.
Nice.
All right, we need some crazy go nuts backstage stories.
Crazy Donuts backstage stories?
Crazy go nuts. Crazy go nuts. Something that happened backstage that is the stuff of legend.
That should have remained there.
Oh, I've got one for you.
Here we go.
Good. Bob will remember Ollie Joe Prater.
Yes.
This guy was legendary. First of all, you've got to physically picture him. He's probably 350 pounds, maybe. Huge, wide man, not tall.
After the diet.
Full length beard, cowboy hat.
Leathery, one of those all leather cowboy hats.
Yeah.
And sounds like one of those wrestlers.
And he had this character, Ollie Joe Prater, and he'd say, "My name is Ollie Joe Prater, and I'm an educated man. This here's everything I learned in college." And he'd open a beer bottle with his teeth and chug the whole bottle. But he, the day that I had to pick him up at the airport, he was on the baggage thing rolling around that I had to pick him up.
And he was passed out?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
And he used to always tell people at the airport he was handicapped, so he would always get a wheelchair. No matter when you picked him up, it'd be in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. And he would do so much cocaine before he went on. One night in Pittsburgh, he steps on stage and blood starts pouring out his nose into his beard while he's doing his act.
It was funny.
It was utterly ridiculous.
Wow.
Original.
Yeah. I've never seen that happen.
Interesting.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Nobody stole that bit.
He would take a gram of cocaine, do the whole gram of cocaine up one nostril. The whole thing.
What?
Just,
Wow.
yeah. That's
Is
what
he
he would,
still alive?
No, he's not. And he's another one that stole from me.
Really?
What did
he was in it? Reputation.
Well, you're really bitter, aren't you?
What could that guy possibly have stolen? Did he steal the baggage thing from you?
No, he was notorious for borrowing other people's material.
Probably another one that doesn't remember to borrowing.
That's a kind.
I'll send it back next week.
Yeah.
He was such a character.
I knew a comic who went to play a club back east, and the MC there, who's there and sees all the headliners come in, he would, after the headliner would leave, he would start to do their material. And this MC was unbelievably funny because he was using all the headliners' material who wasn't there. And so this comic calls the manager and points it out to him. And the manager says, "Yeah, but I wouldn't mention it to him because he gets real sensitive about that."
Oh, my goodness.
So
he gets sensitive about being a thief.
Real sensitive.
Yeah, that would make you sensitive.
Guy's got 1,200 writers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harvey Weinstein hates it when you mention rape. It's
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a raw nerve.
It was consensual, right?
It's a-
Yeah. You know, a comedian, their product is their jokes.
Yeah.
And so what does someone steal? They steal the best jokes.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, after all this work, a comic has a joke that works 99% of the time and gets a huge laugh. That's the one that gets stolen. How sad is that?
Well, I've heard comics discussing this
Commodity.
in the lobby at the Laugh Factory and just saying like it's a plain fact that if you're the first one to do it on TV, then it belongs to you.
Oh my God, that sounds like
As if that's
Catskills.
just the strategy. And I'm sure this went on in vaudeville because the train would go to a different town and those people hadn't heard the joke, and so people were lifting left and right.
There was the first one to do it at the Belasco.
But now that people do comics is a strategy then if that's what they were saying.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, my Uber's here.
The show
We
started.
don't have the rights to your ringtone, Bob.
Oh,
I thought it was a theme song. I was going to start reading the intro
yeah.
again.
I was going to do a manscaping spot.
So is the strategy, since if that was what someone was thinking back in 2004, that you had to be the first one to get a Comedy Central half hour and then you could steal someone's joke and do it and then it would belong to you, is the strategy to put your jokes up on YouTube so that you can timestamp them? So that it's clear that I'm the one who said this joke out loud first.
Wow.
I think
That would do it. That would do it for sure. But I
think it's more of just having an original comedy voice.
Yeah.
Where, somebody can just know that was your joke or know that was not that person's joke and just get better at that. That's the advice I would give comics, to just get better at creating a joke that so sounds like you.
I know that's good advice, and you should have your own voice, your own persona, your own personality. And I've always said to comics, like, who you are on stage is really who you are in between jokes. That's when you're being yourself. But certain jokes are so well crafted, and if you're like Fraser Smith, for example, and you don't want to talk about yourself, you just do topical kind of monologue type jokes, those are really easy to lift because they don't have anything to do with phrase, but that's what he's comfortable doing. So if you're that kind of monologist where it's like, what's up with socks? The guy you weren't very impressed with. So
Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah, there's
so that's
always
his,
one that
his
gets
voice
lost.
is observational comedy, and that's liftable. So what could he do, or would a guy like that want to put his jokes online so that he could say?
It's so different.
Or is it just that you don't want to put too much online because then when people come to see you live, they've already heard the joke and they might not laugh.
That was what you always thought when you did television, that you burned the
you
joke.
burn, yeah, that's what I always heard from guys.
You burn them up. So people. It's like rock groups. If you go to see Steely Dan and they don't play "Do It Again," you feel ripped off or something. If you go. But comedians, they don't. You can't do their greatest hits.
No, music doesn't
necessarily.
burn the way comedy does.
No, it really burns.
So what's the strategy?
What's the strategy? You just got to write a better joke when somebody steals something. But in the day, when I was starting out in New York, before we all came out here to California, it was such a fraternal, sororital kind of thing that if Hiram Caston did one of Dennis Wolfberg's jokes, you'd know it. It was like Brandy's saying.
You'd
it's
be
the voice of the
socially
comedian.
shunned.
And it's just an honor thing. There was an honor code, and I don't know if that's disappeared. You guys have seen comics and their interactions in the green room, which is a very, very interesting part of your job. You manage them. You herd them. They're corralled. You say, okay, you're next.
Yeah.
Come on. Especially when you're emceeing, like both of you have done.
Well, there are also parallel writing that takes place. Where there's something is in the news that is so hot in the news that everybody's going to think of the same
fascinates
joke.
me.
Right.
And
it is
I've always said to myself, if I wrote it and I know in my heart that I wrote the joke, I'm going to keep doing it. Even if I heard somebody else do something similar, that was still my joke, and I'm going to keep doing it. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And it has nothing to do with who did it first on TV. But if you actually wrote the joke, now if I remember very early on, I did a joke that was really close to something Robert Klein did. And I did and I was in New York, and somebody yelled out, "Robert Klein." And I'm like, oh my God. And it was like such a creepy feeling staying on stage hearing that, and I threw the joke out because it was a very, very famous joke that he did. I just never heard it, and I stopped doing it. But
it's identithink. That's what I've always.
Oh yeah, it's you and I have talked about this. I've been at home, read something funny in the paper, went, oh, wouldn't it be funny if yada yada. Then that night I'm watching one of the late night shows and I hear the joke and I go, I just smile at myself, go, yeah, you were right. Yeah. It's like, what are you gonna, 90 guys thought of that.
I used to fax jokes to Jay Leno, and I probably sold him over 50 jokes. But I remember one night that he, if you taped both shows, it was one night. It's probably more than one night that he and Dave had the exact same joke.
Yeah.
It's just gonna happen.
So you were selling to Dave too.
I was not.
No. Okay.
Well, you figure that each of those writing staffs has 20 writers.
Yeah.
And each of them probably wrote, one joke on that subject. So there's probably 50 or 60 jokes in late night that are of this same premise. You know that there's going to be people that come up with the same thing.
It's the logical place to go for the punch.
Danny, you've written before. I mean, do you write 3 jokes for the host, for 5 jokes for him? How does that work usually? What's expected of you? 1 joke? 1 good joke?
No, you write pages of jokes.
Pages.
It depends if there's 2 guys or if there's a room full. Then it's like, how much material will the person look at? And and I'm sure like you've written stuff where you go get rejected, you never throw it out because sooner or later that's usable somewhere. Then it's like, God, which box is that in?
All right, we're going to go to what's Twitter trending because we are a show about the internet. So occasionally we do talk about the internet.
So.
What's Twitter trending today is Hot Pockets. Why? Because we're about to talk about Jim Gaffigan? Maybe. But actually, Hot Pockets was trending because the Hot Pockets heiress has been convicted and faces sentencing in the college admissions scandal. If you sell enough Hot Pockets, you can buy your child's way into Harvard. Derek Sissoni tweets, do we have that one?
Isn't that Deep Pockets?
Deep Hot Pockets. I think we can all agree that Hot Pockets heiress is a super title. # American royalty. And then this one we're going to have some fun with. We'll see how literate anybody is because I didn't get any of these.
Okay, here we go.
All right, so Allison Epstein tweets, challenge. Take the first line of a famous novel, but replace one of the nouns with Hot Pockets heiress. I'll go first. You better not never tell nobody about the Hot Pockets heiress. I don't know if that's Fight Club.
It was the best of times. It was the deepest of Hot Pockets.
So scroll down because you'll see what everyone's playing the game.
There you go.
No. Are you in the replies?
Wouldn't it be funny if Danny's line was somewhere up there?
These are love that.
All right, Thomas, read us some of these. If Danny entered the contest. Like mine would have to do with the Cat in the Hat,
The man in the black fled across the desert, and the Hot Pockets heiress followed.
Let's see. Many years later, as he faced the Hot Pockets heiress, Colonel Ariano, I can't pronounce his name. Is it Isabel Allende? Because I can't pronounce it.
Okay, Luis, cover one eye and read it.
Was to remember it's Spanish, Danny. It's not eyesight.
Oh, okay.
Was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. In my younger and more vulnerable years, the Hot Pockets heiress gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. See, I can't even name which books these are from. It was a queer, sultry summer, the summer they electrocuted the Hot Pockets heiress, and I didn't know what I was doing in New York.
That's from Little Women.
Oh, here's yours, Danny.
Right.
It was the best of Hot Pockets heiress. It was the worst of Hot Pockets heiress.
There we go.
I am the king.
That's Kit.
You need to meet that person.
Kit stole that from you.
Yeah.
All right, I want to thank our guests for being with us. Thank you, Bob Fisher.
Yes.
Thank you, Randy Lubis. Our panel is Jamie Alcroft and Danny Mann. Our producer is Dina Friedman. Our sound designer is John Maddox. Our webmaster is Bill Filipiak. Correct. Our theme music is The Coffee Song by me, Louise Palanker, and John Maddox.
Get out of here.
I'm Louise Palanker.
Plinker.
I almost mispronounced my own name.
Get out of here.
Now cover one eye and say your name.
Plunker. We will see you next week.
Plunker.
Be safe, be well, be kind.